Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of A Chat with Matt. Today I'm joined by the legendary, the well-bearded, the has a very cool background, Bob Willette. What's going on, man?
Thank you for legendary, first of all. And you know what? I got to say right out of the gate, chat with Matt. I love myself a good rhyme, and you've been great. We had a little miscommunication about the time, and you were nothing but accommodating because we had to change the time. So I appreciate it.
Well, the thing is with my scheduling, I kind of just make the whole day available whenever someone says that day because you never know when shit might need to be rescheduled for
It's
whatever
true.
reason.
It's true. It's true.
It just makes it a little easier for everyone.
No, it's true. And regarding my background, I will say this. So I haven't been putting my podcasts, the full videos up yet. I might yet. My background is pretty cool. You know, it's like a 1970s vintage Pioneer system, an old Crossley from the 40s, some cool stuff. But if I were to just angle just a little bit, you would see a puppet theater and a dollhouse and all the dad stuff. So I was actually saying that to some people at work the other day. I was like, okay, yeah, it's cool now. You literally just angle it just a bit, and it's not quite. It's a different kind of cool. It's just not this kind of cool.
I will say that's your next podcast.
Maybe fatherhood. Who knows?
Yeah, I'll say that'd be an interesting one. But what I'm curious what made you want to get into podcasting because you have this legacy of a career in radio and in traditional media. What made you want to switch over to the more long form kind of content?
Well, first of all, I had no choice. I like everybody. Well, here's my this is my joke. I was like, when I started this last September, is I said, you know, like every other radio guy who's between gigs, I got to do something. So I'm going to start a podcast. I've always been close to the podcasting world because of my relationship with the Humble and Fred show and how they were kind of thrust into the podcasting world. And our friend Toronto Mike Boone has been there every step of the way. And in fact, some of the very first Humble and Fred podcasts were recorded at radio stations I was still working at while Humble and Fred were off the air, not working together. I was using the studios on the weekend unbeknownst to the owners, but no harm, no foul. We weren't taking any money away from anybody. So what happened was my contract ended. I was with Bell Media for 15 months. I did 3 months on air at 97.7 Hits FM doing afternoon drive because they had some personnel issues. And then I had a 12-month mat leave cover to be program director for a couple of their really successful adult contemporary radio stations and I left a full-time job. I left a full-time radio job. I was middays and music director at a radio station in Oshawa at 94.9 The Rock, which was a great job. I loved it, but I left that job for the contract for the promise of more. And there was no promise, but for the hope of more, I guess is the better way of saying it. It was one of those things where it's no, I guess if you don't take, no risk, no reward, right? So I left a job that I was gainfully employed for another job, which admittedly paid me much better than that job. But there was an end date. And when that end date came around, well, it ended. There was nothing there. And then subsequently, since then, if you know anything about what's happened in Canadian media, I know why there was nothing there because over 200 people have lost their jobs since last September through Bell Media. So what I did was I started this podcast because I wanted to keep my name out there. I wanted to keep my brand out there, whatever that is, whatever my brand is. And I wanted to have something to do every day because I knew losing a job in September of 2020, I could have been in for a really long haul without a day gig. And I needed something. Normally I have DJing to back me up and go in clubs. I've DJed in clubs and bars for years. That's not happening either. So I needed something. So I started a podcast.
And how do you feel you've adjusted to the podcast kind of format? Because the thing is, with traditional radio, you're following a more standard format, while with podcasting, it's more that free form kind of content.
I think I feel like I've adjusted pretty well. You're right. I feel like there's an appetite for traditional radio to embrace a little bit more long format and go a little deeper. I mean, if you look at what even CBC radio, I mean, they've got the resources that a lot of people don't, but they're doing 8-9 minute interviews on Metro Morning, and that's long form for FM radio, right? I think I have my background. I did work at Mojo Radio, which was, we were doing 18, 19, 20 minute talk breaks back then because we didn't have any spots. So I'm used to going long. I can go long. My only concern was I didn't want my podcast to have no direction. I didn't want it to just be rambling and have no overarching theme. And it literally hit me one night in the middle of the night. I literally woke up. I was amassing all the equipment. My friends were helping me out. I was very lucky. A lot of people in the industry were lending me equipment and directing me in the right ways to get, which software to use and all this stuff. But I didn't have a hook. I didn't have a theme for the podcast. And literally, quite literally, I woke up in the middle of the night one night and I said to and this sounds so cheesy, but it's true. It just hit me. I'm like, my podcast needs to be about change. It needs to have, the hook is that everything we talk about will be filtered through the idea of change, because it was change that was forced upon me that made me want to do the podcast. I've been through change. I've been walked out of buildings before in the industry. We've all had change. We've had changes, deaths in our lives, marriage, children. These are all commonalities that we all have. And I thought we could talk about change forever. So I thought it had legs. I thought it maybe is a little NPR, it's maybe a little too snooty, but I think there's a way of doing it. And I think everybody is an expert in their own way in change. And that's kind of how it came to be.
Do you think the podcast would have came to be if the world hadn't changed as it did?
That's a good question.
I get one or two.
Maybe not. I mean, yeah, maybe not. I mean, if there was no COVID-19, would Bell have had a job for me when my contract was done? So maybe. I would like to think yes. If the economics were different, they would have found a place for me, that there was a good reason to keep me around, that I was a good employee. So maybe. So to answer your question, it probably wouldn't exist. No.
And I kind of look at the concept of change with the pandemic, because like similar to you, this podcast was started based on the pandemic. I got laid off in March of last year. I was losing my mind for 2 weeks because I'm like, I'm so bored. I need something to do. And that's why I started this, mainly kind of the same reasons as you, keep my name out there, but also just to connect with people and have conversations with people in order to make us feel a little less alone. If that kind of makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. When I say, when I say I did it, to keep my name out there, to keep my brand out there, keep my creative chops up, and to keep me from going crazy. That's what you just said, that all encompasses that, right? Is just that. I love, I did discover one thing, over the course of the years of my career, some of the best times I had great times at every place I've ever worked at, but I really enjoyed being the music director and the midday host at 94.9 The Rock because of the opportunities it gave me to interview artists, up and coming artists, established artists. I loved the idea of getting to know and delve deep with artists. And when I was at Proud FM, we did some stuff. We did a Moby special, and it was completely self-serving. I love Moby. He's one of my favorite artists. And my buddy Mike Rice, who was working at EMI Music at the time, helped me put this thing together. And I did this like hour-long deep dive with Moby, and it was like one of the most rewarding things in my life. It was completely self-serving. I love, but it was also good. I think good radio. So I did it, and exactly what you said, to keep from going crazy.
Do you think that radio is going to push more towards that long form kind of content with the recent popularity in podcasting?
I'd like to say yes. I don't know if they've given themselves enough budget now. They've cut so deep. And I work for a terrestrial radio station now. I work for two of them. I am the program manager for two radio stations for I'm back at Chorus Entertainment, where I started my career in the late 90s. I think we need to change. I think we need to embrace what is going on. It's like when Metallica went against Napster. You're not going to win. You can't beat the technology. We have so many good things to offer as a medium, but our biggest problem is our medium as well, in that we're not on demand. You need to listen through commercials to enjoy radio, but we're free. You don't need data. You don't need all you need is a receiver. That's it. You don't need anything. So our unique selling proposition is we are free. How do we get people to stick around And I think our whole system, I think radio is in desperate need for a culture change when it comes to how we make good radio. Not even what good radio is. That's a whole other conversation. How do we make good radio? That's where the change is.
And that is the question. How do you break away from a format which has been instilled for decades upon decades at this point?
You have no choice or you're going to die. We have no choice. I will say this. Look, radio's never going to die. Here's when I shouldn't say never. Here's when radio will die. When GM and Ford and Honda and Toyota stop putting FM radios in the dashboard, that's when radio dies. When that happens, we're done because nobody's going to seek us out. Over the air, traditional FM, AM radio will be done if the automakers decide to stop putting us in the cars. That's where our number one listenership's from. Now, granted, the pandemic has changed things. We've seen the numbers change. We've seen smart speaker tuning. We've seen all the apps. You get the iHeart, the Radio Player Canada. We've seen all those numbers increase. But the fact of the matter is, our bread and butter is the car. So when I started 20 plus years ago, Sirius and XM were just launching. And they were going to kill radio. And before that, cassettes were going to kill radio. And, like video was going to kill the radio star. I think radio has legs. I think radio has a life. But radio has to evolve.
And that's the thing, though. But how could they evolve? Like, is it the introduction of more long-form content conversations? Is it the introduction of a more user-friendly interface with music selection as opposed to having a traditional music director? Like, what could they do to make it more beneficial for the users to seek it out?
Well, Matt, I'm not going to give you away all my secrets that I'm going to give you. Of course, they're paying me for them. Man.
Damn it! I was trying.
Let me have a little sip here. It's Monday afternoon. Look. I think we need to, when I say the culture needs to change, I think the system needs to change. I think if all we want to do is sell 30s and 60s, we're dead in the water. 30s and 60s, kids don't listen to look at YouTube. It's a 5-second commercial and you better make sure you get what you got to say in that 5 seconds. That's the one side of it. The other side of it, the NCAA did it years ago. The moment they called it the Tostitos Bowl, or they called it the Cotton Bowl, brought to you by Cottonelle or whatever, that title sponsorship. I find it ironic, and I've said this to people before, we need to go back almost to like when television started. In the middle of the show, to be like, wait a minute, Lucy, I need to light up one of these beautiful Virginia Slims. Like, I'm talking integrated sponsorships that are seamless. That people are going to pay for. Look at podcasting. People are paying big bucks to sponsor podcasting. It's taken a long time, but it's getting there, and you can see it happening. People aren't making their millions yet, but some guys are. Joe Rogan, obviously, like there are guys who are making their millions. But generally speaking, the average guy is not making any dough on their podcast. But all you need is that one guy who believes in what you're doing, and one guy with deep pockets who goes, you know what? I know you only got 500 subscribers, but I bet you can speak directly to those 500 subscribers unlike anybody else. And I know if you say you like this product, that you're going to move my needle. And that's what it comes down to. So I think for radio, I think we need to stop. And this is going to be hard. And maybe I'll lose my job over this, but it's going to be hard to convince the old guard that we can't just sell 30s and 60s anymore. We can't. We need to find out creative, innovative ways. Right down to, when I was at Evanov Radio Group, Z103 was one of the first guys doing it too, where it's like, it's the Pizza Studio. It's Starbucks traffic brought to you by, like, it's all, but you got to do it in a way that stays true to your brand. If you just start slapping a sponsor on every little feature, it becomes clutter, and it's no good for anybody. It's not good for your client. It's not good for you as a product either. So there's a balance. I'm not saying I know all the answers, but I think that's where we have to start. If we want to survive and we want to keep making money, we need to rethink the entire system.
And I think you nailed it with the concept of integrated content, and you've also nailed it with the point of not oversaturating your content with sponsorship kind of stuff, essentially. But with that, it's also kind of a defining line of what's the difference between a cringy integrated one and one that actually seems seamless. And that more bases it on the person as opposed to the product or the station or whatever it is.
Why is it okay on Conan O'Brien's podcast for Conan to have fun? If you've listened to his Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, why is it okay for him to do a commercial about underwear? Because it's funny. Because he's signed off on it, and he said, you know what, I'll read that, and he makes fun of himself and even the product a little bit, and the people who own the product are okay with it. So there's a lot of trust involved. There's going to have to be trust. That's how we're going to have to do it. What the difference between cringy and funny is, that's so subjective. I think it's going to change from station to station, and you can't have. I don't think any radio company will have. We'll be able to have a blanket. Here's how we do endorsements, or here's how we do integrated marketing. I don't think a blanket statement will work if you're going to with different formats, with different personalities, and different products.
No, absolutely. And I completely agree with that. I'm just curious how the stations are going to adjust, because it's been that brick and mortar traditional format for so long, selling the 30s and 60s,
Yep.
having the integrated kind of general content. And it's also more about injecting personality back into those commercial radio stations, because a big draw for a lot of those stations at a period of time was when they were really pushing the personalities in the morning, personalities in the afternoon, give people a reason to go listen to this person talk.
Yes, absolutely. And the problem is now we've cut it so skinny, so thin. Where are those personalities coming from? I don't know. I know that I work in Kingston and I've got a great team, really, really strong people. You know what? They're happy there though. Most of them want to stay there. They want to be big fish in a small to medium sized pond, it seems like, which is great. But it used, when I started and before that, you'd go to northern Alberta and you'd go cut your teeth and you'd have a PD, hopefully, who would let you have some fun. That's, the problem is these PDs, I'm a PD, but sometimes they're browbeaten down. They're not letting, they're afraid to let their kid, let the young talent be talent. So, what's the last great announcer in Toronto that, like, on radio? Who's great right now? Is it Fearless Fred? Guy's in his 40s. Like, is it Carly, who's middays at the Edge? She's great. She is, and she's in her 20s at least. I mean, I think late 20s, early 30s. Where is the talent coming from? I know Christian Hall is a program director out in Alberta. He runs a bunch of stations, and him and I have talked on a couple occasions about, you got to let them make the mistakes. But the problem is, it's $1 million a share point. You can't let them make mistakes in Toronto or Vancouver or Montreal. They got to make mistakes somewhere else. But guess what? We don't have any live announcers in New Liskeard or in Fort whatever. You know what I mean? We don't have that. So what I'm proposing might be impossible at this point. I don't know. We may have reached the tipping point, and we might not be able to do all the things that I think need to be done. I'm not sure.
And that's a huge thing. It's always coming down to money at the end of the day, and whether or not it's financially worth it to take a risk on someone. Do you also think that a possibility is, with the fact that there's not as much young talent coming out, it's because the young talent's going towards the new age of digital media, of video content, YouTube, TikTok, whatever it is?
Maybe, but I don't think they're making money there either, though. Maybe they are, but I don't know. There, the amount of TikTokers and the amount of Instagrammers and different influencers, the amount of them that there are versus the ones that are actually making the money. And I would imagine it's probably just the same. It's just as hard of slog to do it on the digital side as it is on the analog side. So you might be right. Maybe the talent's not attracted to us, and that's another problem. The fact of the matter is, there's no 15-year-olds who are fans of radio. No 15-year-old has a favorite radio station. They wouldn't listen to radio. They only listen to radio if they have to, if they're in the car with their parents. And even then, their parents now, we're talking 40-year-olds. Some of them might not have even had favorite radio stations. There's a huge culture problem for sure. Are they going elsewhere? Probably, yeah.
But the question is, with the culture shift, what I can't even think of what the moment would be that could change that culture shift in radio to adjust to the modern age.
Well, there's a big You know, if you know anything about radio, you know that, you know, you have the CRTC regulations. The initial one started in 1986, or is the big one that's kind of, and then it's been renewed a bunch of different times to reflect, you know, these are your CanCon rules, your ownership rules. You know, how many radio stations can one company own in a market? I know that, and I don't know where they are in the negotiations and the presentations, but you know, the broadcasters are in front of the CRTC right now, and they're saying we are handcuffed. It's not an equal playing field. We can't compete with Spotify. We can't compete with Sirius XM because we have rules that they don't have. And this is not to Pandora's box, no pun intended, is open, even though we can't get Pandora here. But you know what I mean? Like it's open. So you need to make it easier for us. You need to say, and it's not that we don't want to play Canadian music, but you need to reward us for playing new Canadian music. You need to say, you know what, if we play a new Canadian band who's never charted before, you give us 2 Canadian songs for that. Because guess what? We can play Corey Hart and 5440 forever. It's not helping anybody. Those guys are already fine. So I think that the first step is the regulatory side. I think that when the regulatory side is decided on what it is that we are going to be moving forward, that's when I think everybody can get the ownership rules can change. Maybe it is a Stingray coming. They already own all these stations. Maybe they own more. You know, maybe companies that don't want to own radio stations, which it certainly seems like there are a few, but they have them. Maybe they can sell to other people in the market who do want to be there. I don't know. I think that if you're asking me for you know, what's going to be that flashpoint, that's the first thing that comes to mind. I don't know anything beyond that.
We'll be right back after this music break and a word from today's sponsor, Anchor.
Something I said
do you think the lack of kind of what's the phrase? The lack of fuck's sakes, I forgot the word. But basically, the incentive, the lack of the incentive to play new Canadian bands to help break them. Is that ever? Do you think that is going to change, or is it because we're so deep into this now?
Yeah, I think it will. I actually think it will. I remember when I was with Evanov Radio Group and we were pitching. So I don't know if you remember how Indie 88 came to be. My Indie 88 used to be CKLN. Used to be, it was 88.5. It was the Ryerson University station. They lost their license for basically for not following the rules. They weren't reporting anything. It wasn't nefarious. I'm not here to judge the people who were running CKLN, but they fucked up. Let's be honest. Like they blew it. They had this station that's this legendary radio station, and they didn't keep logs. They didn't do the things that are part of your as a license holder. You have to keep recordings for 30 days of everything you do for legal. They weren't doing that, so they had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to fit, and they lost it. So then it became what's called a public call. So it's like, we have this, I mean, this real estate on the dial is worth millions and millions of dollars, and we can't just give it to anybody. So they had a call. So I was part of the presenting team for Evanov Radio Group. We wanted to move 103.9 Proud FM, which is a second adjacency to 103.5 Z103 CIDC, and we wanted to move it to 80. We were willing to give CKLN 103.9 at the 250 watts that we were, or 50 watts. It was ridiculous how small we were, and we were willing to give it to them in exchange for having 88.5. Ultimately, the Bingleys got it, and they turned it into 88, Indie 88. Part of what everybody was pitching was the emerging artist rule. Now the problem is, the emerging artist rule is so convoluted. It's hard to say, like for the longest time, Tegan and Sarah were still counted as an emerging artist because they didn't chart on one chart or another chart. So what happens is Indie 88 and everybody else is, we're going to play 40% of the music we're going to play will be emerging artists. So what happened though is the CRTC never made the emerging artist rule a condition of license. They made it an expectation of your license, but not a condition of your license. So Indie 88, and I don't know what they did or didn't do. They've done a fine job making themselves a profitable radio station in Toronto with some amazing talent. They said that we'll play 35, whatever it was, 40. We're going to play 40% Canadian, and of that 40% Canadian, 20% of it will be emerging artists. The problem is that was never a condition of license. There's a difference between an expectation of license and a condition of your license. If you have an expectation of your license, we'd like you to do it, but if you don't, we understand. And there are other things. There's, and I don't even know if there's any Category 3 radio stations out there anymore. But I know when Evanov Radio Group, when I was with them, we bought a radio station off of Newcap in Winnipeg, which was a Category 3 radio station. In which, actually, I can give you another example. I'm rambling now. Get me going on the CRTC and their expectations.
This is what I wanted.
Yeah. We have to play. So what happened was, Newcap had this radio station that they called it like a blues rock radio station, and so Category 3 music is music like gospel music and blues music and basically not pop music. Anything country counts as pop. Hip hop counts as pop, but it was basically any religious music, anything that is not popular music counts as Category 3, classical, those kind of things. So they had this radio station that they were trying to play like Aerosmith and Led Zeppelin B-sides as blues tracks, and they were like, okay, enough, we can't even be bothered. The point is, it's like you can't be a little pregnant, It's like the CRTC either has to say we are going to embrace this. Either Category 3, which would be really difficult. I can't see that happening. Or we're gonna figure out a way to define what an emerging artist is, and we are going to reward those people, those radio stations that play emerging artists and support emerging artists. Do I think they'll do it? I actually do think they will. I think they will. I don't know if it might not be enough, but I think they'll do it. I think there is an appetite for it. I don't know if the broadcasters have the appetite for it, but I think they'll do it.
I think an issue that's going to come up, though, is that defining definition of an emerging artist? Because who is the one deciding it? Is it someone who's of the current age, of the current demographic that's on the rise, in the deep with the bands that are currently on the rise, or is it someone who's going to be sitting behind a desk that kind of has a general idea of how the Canadian scene is currently running?
I can tell you that when I was at Bell Media the first time, we were keeping track of how much emerging artists we were playing. And this is when Alessia Cara broke. If you know anything about top 40 music.
Yeah.
Alessia Cara was like huge, right? Out of Brampton, Ontario. She's been, she was like, I think she was in Moana, wasn't she? Like, she's massive, or one, she's massive star. But what happens is you have to have some, whether or not it's accurate or not, you could argue, but you got to establish it. And I believe it was once you've had a top 20 hit on a given chart, whether it was a media-based chart or a BDS chart, you have to establish something. Then you count as then the clock starts ticking as to how long you're an emerging artist for. So Alessia Cara, even though she'd already had, Here, her first song, her first song was a massive hit. She remained an emerging artist for another 2 years, I think it was. It's probably too long, actually.
Yeah.
But the point is, at least as long as there is a definition, I think that's all that matters. We could argue about whether or not it helps or it counts or not, or it should be or not, based on the age of a guy behind a desk. I don't think that's the issue. The issue right now is it hasn't been clear who is and who isn't an emerging artist. I've been in on those calls. I've seen the Excel spreadsheets from SOCAN and from, I've been there. I've seen them. And it was like, why is this artist still an emerging artist? What? Okay, fine. I mean, I'll play it because, they're still an emerging artist, but, I don't know. I mean, the Tea Party's been around a while, so obviously I'm kidding, but I think I'm not so worried about getting worried. I'm not worried about the semantics. I'd be more worried about just getting it done.
and that's the thing. Is it going to get done? Is 2021 the year? Or
I don't know if
still down the line for it.
I don't know if it's 2021. I don't know where those talks are. That's above my pay grade. I know that they're happening, but I think they'll get done. Yeah, man, I do. We have no choice. If the CRTC, if the government of Canada actually cares to support and try to actually save what we do on the traditional media side, I think they will get it done.
And I certainly hope so. Bob, I kind of want to talk about your background. What made you want to get into broadcasting?
So in 97, 98, I'm like 21, 22 years old. I'm going to U of T.
Nope, Bob.
In high school.
Oh, and you just cut off there. Sorry, Bob.
Okay. No, okay. That's all right. It was way too deep anyway. I wanted to get, so when I was in high school, I was a performer. I did drama. I did choir. I did all that, improv. I did all that. I've always wanted to be a performer. I don't think I realized till after I left high school how much I loved radio. It took me a while to realize it. And I was a DJ as well. My dad was a DJ. My dad used to like DJ weddings and banquets and bar mitzvahs and stuff. So always had music around me. Always had record players and records and CDs and cassettes and all those things around me. Music's always been a big part of my life. When I was in high school and I did a bunch of plays and different things, I loved it. But I have to admit, if I had to go back, I would tell myself to buck up and enjoy the act of getting turned down in an audition more. I didn't like getting turned down on auditions, and I kind of gave up on it pretty fast. But I was my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, in the late 90s, called me one morning and said, "Hey, Humble and Fred need an intern, and you should be it." And I was like, "Yes, I should," because I love the Humble and Fred show. Anyways, long story short, that's how I got into it. I didn't realize how much I loved radio until kind of I got into it, and I realized that when I was a kid, I mean, I used to listen to 680 here, like Tom Rivers and Mike Cooper, and I was a big radio kid. I also used to like take a cassette player and a record player, and I used to interview people on comedy records. I would literally I would interview Bill Cosby. I would split He never touched me, by the way. I would sorry.
I wasn't going to say it.
Inappropriate. He would I would literally because I knew these comedy things I knew these so deep because I used to listen to these comedy albums all the time. I would literally write questions out about good evening, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bobby Willette Show. And I would say, joining me today is Bill Cosby. Mr. Cosby, how are you? And then I would literally splice in Bill Cosby going, good. And it'd be how are you today? And it's we were walking in the rain or whatever the case may be. And I did that. And so I didn't even realize I was kind of making my own little interview. I was my own little radio shows when I was 8, 9, 10, 12 years old. So it was in retrospect that I realized, I've kind of loved radio all along and not even really realized it.
And did you go to school at all for radio, or what did you end up going to school for?
So I was I'm old enough to I went to I did the grade 13 twice. There were still grade OACs in Ontario. Yeah. So back I always say I was in the 8-year program, but I fast tracked and I was done in 6. So I took an extra year to graduate high school. So I graduated high school in 5 years, and then I had I needed 3 credits to finish my OACs. Anyways, I got my OACs, and then I was I'm 19 or something. I'm finishing high school. I just wanted to do another musical, to be honest. I was acting. I loved acting and doing improv. I went to Centennial College for a year, and actually in my class was Mocha. Carl from Rosin Mocha. Yeah, it was in my class. We were both in the same general arts and science class. It wasn't radio. It was just a general arts and science. And he probably wouldn't even remember that, but I remember him being there. And then I got my 1 year, and then I ended up going to U of T part-time as English and sociology. And I actually went into CIUT to volunteer. And I've told this story a few times now, if anybody's ever listened to me. A little tip for the kids. If you go into a radio station and they ask you, what shows do you listen to? Don't say, oh, I don't listen to your station. I just want to volunteer, which is what I did at 20 years old. Idiot that I am. So needless to say, they didn't even want me for free at CIUT because I said I don't listen. I just want to hang out and figure out radio. No, so I never actually went to school for any radio. I have taught at Seneca. I taught for a couple of years with Jim Carr there. I did the industry relations class for, I think, 2 years. I did 4 semesters there. But I never went to school for radio.
Do you think it would have made any difference if you did go to school for radio or not?
God bless anybody, all the people who are teaching, but no. I'm sorry to anybody, all my friends who are in it. Here's what radio college gives you the motivation and hopefully the contacts to get those internships that you need, so you get your foot in the door. I managed to get my foot in the door without that, but other than that, I don't think you get much else out of it, to be completely honest.
That's interesting to hear you say, because the amount of people that always talk about, you should always go to school for broadcasting and always go to school for radio and all that kind of stuff.
I don't know, man. Maybe I've just been at it too long. I think it's a waste of time and money. I don't know anything. Here's the thing. Every time I talk to a kid who's gone to radio school, they're teaching things that are out of date, or they're not teaching the right things. And maybe that makes me a bastard for quitting, but I taught for 4 semesters and I was like, I didn't want to do it. I was producing the Humble and Fred show at Mix 99.9 at the time. And look, I know they all do a good job. I have a lot of very good, very former colleagues and people who do a really good job. I don't think, here's the thing. I don't think they teach you anything that you can't learn on your own. However, that being said, I will throw this caveat in before all the people I know who teach radio get on my ass. I will say this. They get you the in, because I don't know if the in is as easy as it used to be. As a former Humble and Fred intern, the in was you needed to love radio, you needed to love the Humble and Fred show, and you needed to show up for free for 6 months. That was the in. Now you have the in is easier because of the radio. That gives you the reason. You're not just some kid knocking on the door hoping for something. So I will say that's where the value is. They get you the in.
And you mentioned also the fact that they're teaching stuff that's out of date. What are they missing in their curriculum then?
How to build a clock. What is a clock? What are categories in Music Master? What's media base? What's BDS? What are mentor radio stations? What are what's a proper air check that with expectations? I don't know. Maybe the last one that's happening, but I can tell you the stuff before that is not.
And do you think they're going to update the curriculums at all, or
you'd have to ask those guys? I don't know, man. I mean, look, I know Humber's got a great program, and Loyalist, and Conestoga, and Seneca, where I taught. I know they all got great programs. I don't know if they're. I got a black cat too.
Yeah, he just ran into the room. This is Blue, in case anyone was wondering.
Yeah. So, will they? I don't know. I think I don't want to get into
it. Don't want to get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, seriously. Who knows? What'll happen is and here's the thing. Admittedly, look, all that being said, what a dick I am. Who's the first person I called when I didn't have a gig? I called Jim Carr at Seneca College. Said, "Hey, you got any openings?" I will totally admit that.
And then here's the other one.
Nice.
All the animals are running in.
I've only got one, and my animals. I have 2 children and 1 cat. But that is very cute.
Oh God, my girlfriend's trying to wrangle the cats.
All right.
Because he's a battering ram. He just rams in the door.
The cats are opening the doors. That's
yeah. Our one, the first one, he's kind of just a brick with legs, and he just kind of rams into the door.
He's a little black cat, eh? How old is he? The little black one.
He's a big boy. How old is he? He's 7 months. Just past 7.
Oh, see,
7 months today. So
my black cat's about 4 or 5 years old, but she was a rescue from Toronto Animal Services.
Oh, yeah.
And so when we picked her up, she was 8 weeks old, and she was so nice and calm and gentle. We're picking her up for my 6-year-old daughter because her forever wish was to have a cat. I've never owned a cat in my life. I've been a dog person, and she, so we go and I'm signing the papers. I'm like, we're gonna take this cat. I'm like, oh, what's her story? She's only 8 weeks old. She's just a little kitten. She's like, oh, she's from a feral cat colony. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Yeah. Her mother was too wild for us to bring in, so we just fixed her and put her back out there.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So needless to say, do you know what they're called? Feel Away, or they're airborne hormones you use a plug-in for your cats. Yeah. Got to do that for this little bastard I have. Anyways, that's my take on cats.
No,
not that you asked.
Yeah, no, hey, I love cats. I just want to make a cat podcast next. But nice. No, the second one I was holding, Ryder, she was found in a barn at 4 weeks old by a artist. She was 3 weeks. Oh, she was 3 weeks old.
Are you out in Durham, Matthew? Is that?
Yes, I am out in Oshawa area.
You're in the
right around the corner from your old stomping grounds, actually.
Yeah, man. So I think that's where we first contacted each other.
Yeah, a while ago.
I would have been at 94.9 The Rock, I think, is when you would have started following me on Facebook or
something like that.
Or befriended each other on Facebook.
Yeah, something like that a while ago. I can barely remember yesterday, let alone that.
No kidding, man.
Yeah. But the rider, she was found 3 weeks as a barn cat, and Blue we got off Facebook, I think, or something like that.
Yeah. Now the problem is so that was my 10-year-old's 6th birthday. My 5-year-old turned 6 in May, and I think she thinks she wants a cat too. And I'm like, well, if we get another cat, I feel like Rocket, the first one, will kill that cat. So I don't know how that's going to work.
It's a slow integration process, because that's kind of what we have to do for those two. Because the second one, the black and white one, is kind of essentially we live in her apartment and she just tolerates us.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
So,
I know.
Queen of the castle kind of thing.
Oh, I get it.
We'll be right back after this music break and a word from today's sponsor, Anchor.
You're sleeping. Wake up. You're sleeping. Lately, I've been a slave to this darkness, just trying to figure out what sets me apart. But maybe I'll find that it's brighter if I embrace who I was at the start. With patience wearing thin, in places you have been, find comfort in your skin. Don't like the path you're walking, then wake up. You're sleeping. Wake up. You're sleeping. The things that set us apart are now a break us close. Now I feel so alive now that I've broken. Hard to define who you are when you're caught up by the dark. Sometimes it gets hard to see the flame that begins to spark. We're chasing after ourselves, but it gets hard to keep pace. So tell me, what does it take to finally feel in place? Take their hands off from your eyes, so you can see what they won't tell. It's what we knew deep down inside, that maybe we control ourselves. Maybe we control ourselves. Maybe we control ourselves. Maybe we control ourselves. With patience wearing thin, in places you have been, find comfort in your skin. Don't like the path you're walking in, hard to define who you are. With patience wearing the dark, sometimes it gets hard to see. In places you have been, we're chasing after ourselves, but it gets hard to keep pace. So tell me, what does it take to finally feel the place? With open eyes, you feel so alive. With open eyes,
So, Bob, I'm kind of curious, where do you think you're going to go next? Because obviously the podcast is still fairly new. You're still moving forward with that. What's the general landscape for Bob Willette?
Well, I'm okay. So Bob's Basement is 17 episodes in, and I gotta say it's gone like so much. I don't know what my expectations were, and admittedly, I don't delve too deep into the numbers because I would be very discouraged to know that only 12 people were listening. I got to admit, like my ego couldn't handle it, but. I'm working with Toronto Mike. He's taking care of the back end of stuff, so I'm pretty lucky that I have that that freedom. But I do know that like through Chartable, under the personal journals category, which of like tens of thousands of podcasts, I ranked as high as like 52nd in Canada. Yeah, like that's amazing. Like I'm
massive.
17 episodes in. I've broke the top 100. Right now, like just the other day, I was at like with the podcast, the one with Craig Northey and Robbie Baker from the Tragically Hip. I was like in the top 200 of the personal journal category. It blew me away. Like it's amazing. Like I'm so happy about that. It's admittedly it's great for my ego. Like it's a good little. I had a conversation with a guy that this guy Steve Gazzard who I worked with. Leading up to my contract ending at Bell. And he's an executive coach guy. Shout out to Steve Gazzard. The guy's amazing. He helped me through this transition. And I told him, I said, and I quoted the Tragically Hip because they are one of my favorite bands. I was like, it's a vain pursuit. Like it is a vain pursuit. He's like, but it makes me feel good. And he's like, why else? Don't apologize for that. Good for you. It does make you. And if somewhere along the way, my silly little take on change and whatnot can actually help other people, which is what I posted on LinkedIn the other day, because there's been so many people lose jobs. If I've, then great. When I got the job, so first of all, let me say how fortunate I feel to have landed a job in this current economy. I feel so lucky that Chorus took me in. Now, I feel like they made the right decision. I think I'm pretty good at what I do. I will say that, but I am very, very lucky to have gotten a job, a full-time job, being the program director for Big and Fresh FM in Kingston. And I told them out of the gate, I'm like, I'm going to continue to do my podcast on my own time. And I'm not using Chorus. I mean, Chorus has their own, they have Curious Cast, and maybe someday they'll want to say, hey, Bob, why don't we promote your podcast on Curious Cast, which would be great. But I haven't even gone down that road, because I'm being fulfilled in a couple different ways. I love being a program director. I do. I love being, and technically my role is program manager, but it's all semantics. It's just all different radio station jargon. So, my long answer to your short question is I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Tonight at 7:00, I'm interviewing Biff Naked, talking to her about her change. I'm always thinking about who can I talk to about change, and specifically about their experience with change. And I'm always, and I have to admit, I do want to lean towards change that was unwelcome, because I think that's what we need to learn from, because we've all had change thrust upon us. So I'm always thinking about who could I talk, who has had change thrust upon them that they didn't want. And it happens all the time. We all do. We lose jobs, we lose girlfriends, we lose loved ones, we have death, we have, any number of things could count as that. So I'm going to keep doing it. I'm literally, last Thursday, I think, was my 1 month anniversary as the program director or program manager for these 2 radio stations in Kingston. And I haven't even been there yet. Thanks to the pandemic, I've been running these 2 radio stations from Bob's basement. So I'm going to keep doing that, and I'm loving doing it. And there's some big things happening, and it's a very competitive market. It is a union shop, so that's a new challenge for me as a leader, as a programmer, on how to navigate those waters. Not in a bad way, just a different thing. So I'm learning every day, and I'm very fortunate to have a great leader of my own. My immediate boss is phenomenal. I'm going to keep doing it. I aim to do 1 podcast a week. So it's quite literally been 17 or 18 weeks since the contract ended at Bell, and I've done a podcast a week since then. I've at least produced a podcast a week. Sometimes I've had a little in the can. I keep going over Christmas, that kind of thing. That's my goal. I want to keep doing a podcast a week. I want to keep reaching out to people. I want to challenge myself. One of my favorite episodes that I did was with Nadia Lloyd. And Nadia Lloyd is a Toronto artist who came up with the Black Lives Matter Toronto mask that all the Raptors wore in the bubble, with the fist and the city in the background. And I just found her story so intriguing, or not intriguing, so interesting. Intriguing is not the right word, but so interesting and inspirational. I literally just tweeted her. I tweeted her out of the blue. I didn't know her from anything. I had no connection at all, and she got back to me right away, and it turned out to be one of my favorite episodes that I've done. I'm very fortunate that I've got a lot of great relationships because of the 20 plus years in, as you said, in traditional media. You don't get Monica Schneier, a former supermodel, without having you don't just reach out to Monica Schneier. I had a past relationship with her, right? So I'm very lucky that I have, if I could be, I normally try to publish on Thursday or Friday. I could be scrambling on Wednesday, and I know I could call Humble and Fred, and I could have them on my podcast. I'm very lucky that I get to do that. So I'm going to keep doing it for as long as I have the time to do it. And I'm going to stay in traditional radio and be a flag bearer for traditional radio for as long as I can. I think we can both exist. I think we both have things to offer, and I think we can, I think we can both have fun and make a good business out of and still exist together. And maybe I'm a little microcosm of that, of like, I can have one foot in both worlds.
Is there any white whale kind of guest that you're aiming to get, or you have your goals? Like, do you have a list written out, or is it just kind of whoever you find interesting?
I mean, so here's the deal. Like, if I was talking like, so I have a couple different things. I have to admit, like, I could talk to music and radio people every day for like years and never have a hard time finding people. Like, I could talk to radio and music people. I speak their language. I am from that world. I am challenging myself a little bit to try to find people outside that world. That's why Nadia Lloyd really interested me. She had no background in broadcast that I knew of. She was an artist. She's a visual artist. That's outside of my comfort zone. I want to diversify. I want more women on my podcast. That's why I'm having Biff Naked on. I'm working with. I want to have Tara Sloan from CBC, formerly Joy Drop. I'm going to have her on. I want to have more women on. I want to have more people of color on. I feel like I could sit around and talk to middle-aged white guys all the time. I am a middle-aged white guy. It's fine, but I want to do more. All of that being so, that is definitely that is informing my moves forward. I want to do that. I'm making a concerted effort because I've been afforded. I want to acknowledge my privilege, and I have had unbelievable privilege in my career, in my life. Growing up in Toronto and Ontario housing as a little white boy was a lot easier than other kids. So I acknowledge that, and I embrace that. And if I can, I want to be able to broaden my horizons as much as possible and learn more from as many different voices as possible. All of that being said, yeah, I mean, come on. If I was going to name my top 3 bands, as a music guy, I've had 2 members from the 2 of the top 3 bands already. I had Stephen Page, the Bare Naked Ladies. I had Robbie Baker of the Tragically Hip. My absolute all-time favorite band is not Canadian, and I have practically zero chance of ever getting any of them on. But I have seen Pearl Jam over 40 times, and I have seen Pearl Jam in Rome. I have seen Pearl Jam in New York City. I saw Pearl Jam on Letterman. I saw Pearl Jam at the Commodore Ballroom in Vancouver. Pearl Jam is my all-time favorite band. Their music means more to me than anybody else. Anybody other, I can't describe what that band means to me. Will I ever get one of them on? Probably not. But yeah, that would be the white whale for sure.
I mean, never say never. You've been in traditional media for X amount of years working with radio and music guys. So it's definitely, you have a better chance than probably I fucking would.
You know what? You're right. You are right. Yes. Oh, for sure. 100%. I acknowledge that. When I look at the list of people who have already gotten, it is all relationship based. It's 20 plus years in the business. I can reach out. My first guest was the founding member of fucking Our Lady Peace. How great was that? I got Mike Turner on, and Mike was so giving, and everybody's been so wonderful. You're right. I probably should not say that it would never happen. I mean, the fact that I got Robbie Baker on is phenomenal. That happened, right? And I'm so grateful that it did. And that's shout out to Jake Gold for making that happen. But, let's be honest. I mean, all my friends at Universal Music can do everything they want. Me getting somebody from Pearl Jam on is pretty friggin' unlikely. But that's, and I even then, what do I even say to the band that's made the music that's, changed my life? I don't know. But that would be it. What about you? Before I'm going to ask you a question, who do you want?
Here's the thing with me and how I kind of book it. I kind of book this show, people that I just have an interest in. I don't really have any goals or expectations because it's not about the status. It's not about any of that shit for me. It's whether or not I can have an interesting conversation with you.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how I look at it.
When you're putting it together, the chat with Matt, it's literally just, I think this guy knows a little bit about something, or this girl knows a little bit about something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, they seem kind of cool. Send them a message, see what happens.
Well, exactly. And that's, that happened with me with Corey Cross, former defenseman for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I saw him tweet something at Joe Bowen, and I was like, Corey Cross? Oh my God, I'd love to have that guy. Just random, former Toronto Maple Leaf defense. And he said yes right away. So you're right. It's again, back to the no risk, no reward thing, right? Like it's fun to be able to do it. No, I appreciate you having me on, by the way. It's the fact that I made the list, I'm very, very happy.
Oh, no, of course. Like I've always been fascinated by your career and what you've done, and just obviously I came aware of you when I came to Durham, and you were working at the Rock at the time and all that kind of stuff. But just seeing where you've gone and seeing this podcast that you've launched and seeing how well it's already going, it's just it made me want to talk to you more, because it's just, this guy has a cool story. Let's learn a bit more about it. See if I can get some nuggets of wisdom for myself or the listeners.
Wisdom from me, but
you have some wisdom. Honestly, no risk, no reward. Best piece of advice I've been ever given. The worst thing anyone can say to you is no.
Yeah, exactly. What's the worst they're going to say? No? Okay, fine. No problem. Yeah, and you know what? I've had a few people say no, and a few people who I thought would say yes have said no, or at least no, not right now.
Mm-hmm.
I get a lot of no, not right now. So the key with that is persistence, right? Like you get a no, not right now. Ben Koalo, it's a Billy Talent.
Okay, never mind. I have someone. Ben Koalo, it's a Billy Talent.
You want to get Ben Koalo, it's a Billy Talent on you?
I got a Billy Talent 2 tattoo, my guy.
Dude. Oh, we'll get you Billy Talent on. Okay. What about
I met Ian.
Yeah.
I met Ian when I was working at a North by Northeast show that he was running the showcase for it, and that's where I met him. Yeah. His hair was all perfect, and the first thing I ever said to him was, "How do you get your hair like that?"
I'm sure he's never heard that before.
Out of all the questions I could ask, oh yeah, your hair.
So Ben and I used to work together. Right? Ben used to work at the Edge when I was still there. So he was working with Bookie on the Edge. He was producing Live in Toronto, and I was producing the Humble and Fred show. So I know Ben relatively well, and but he's one of the guys who said no, not right now. Now they got some new music coming out. I will reach out to him and I will give you a plug if I get him on. I promise you.
Please.
I promise you, I will at the very least drop a chat with Matt on there and tell him to do your podcast.
Oh, that would be a dream come true. Because
I'll do my best. I can't make promises.
It's all good. Hey, listen, that's better than anything I could have asked.
I want to bring it. I got to put So I mean, and you must know the guys in the Lazies, right?
Yeah. Of course, I've had Leon on ages ago.
Yeah, I had Leon was my second guest, and he was great. He's phenomenal. But no, so there you go. Wow, Billy Talent tattoo. There you go. Look at that. I just randomly brought it up too. We'll figure it out, and I will. If I get Ben, I get Ben first because I brought it up. But if Ben decides to come on, I will give you a plug.
Thank you very much, Bob. Thanks for taking the time to hang out with me for a bit. This has been great. Where can people find you and what you're doing?
Basically it's at Bob Willette on Twitter. Willette spelled like Gillette, but with a W. And that's kind of where I kind of go between the three. Like, I'm sorry, I'm too old to have a TikTok. I can't do it. I don't have. I've got my. You can friend me on Facebook at just Bob Willette. The podcast is actually called Bob's Basement, a podcast about change. I just looked it up. I'm actually listed in between Bob Saget and a podcast about Bubba Fett. It's called Bubba
perfect.
Chat. I was like, perfect. How happy am I to be on at that point? So you can just look me up, Bob's Basement. You will get a lot of Bob's Burgers first, but keep going. Bob's Basement, a podcast about change. 17 episodes in. Last episode was with Billy Newton Davis, and if you don't know who Billy Newton Davis is, that's okay. He was a member of a band called the Nylons. He's won 2 Junos. He's had a duet with Celine Dion. He is. Just listen. It was one of my longest episodes. I could have gone longer. He's 75 minutes of gold. The guy's been on the stage with Sammy Davis frickin' Jr. You need to listen to this podcast. Not about me. His storytelling is phenomenal. He was a member of the Church of Scientology for 13 years, and he gives some details about Scientology that you've never heard before. I cannot tell you how happy I am with that last episode. It's so good.
All right. All of Bob's stuff will be down in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're listening to audio, sorry.
Yeah, figure it out.
You'll
figure
find
it out. Bob,
all right, guys.
Cheers. Thank you so much, Matt.
Cheers. All right. Thanks, guys. See you next week. Peace.